Assassin's Creed has made us do a lot of terrible things over the years, but nothing the franchise has ever thrown at us compares to the moments where it just makes us sit there and watch. From a teenager screaming in a public square, to a child's body floating in the Nile, to a pirate singing alone in an empty tavern. Today, I'm breaking down the saddest moments in the entire franchise, starting with the one that started it all. The Auditore executions. Ezio Auditore is one of the most iconic characters in gaming history. Everybody knows that, but here's what makes his origin so brutal. The game tricks you into forgetting it's a tragedy. You spend the opening hours of Assassin's Creed 2 living Ezio's actual life. You race Federico across the rooftops of Florence, you collect feathers for Petruchio, you get into fistfights, flirt with girls, the Auditore family feels real, and the game gives you just enough time with them to let your guard down completely. Then it kills 3 of them in a public square. Giovanni Auditore, his eldest son Federico, and his youngest son Petruchio are publicly hanged in Florence on the orders of the Pazzi and Rodrigo Borgia. Giovanni wasn't just Ezio's father, he was the leader of the entire Florentine assassin cell. So this wasn't just murder, it was a calculated political execution designed to dismantle the Brotherhood in one afternoon. But the part that still hits hardest is Ezio himself. He's 17, he's not a trained killer. He's a kid standing in a crowd, watching his family die, screaming for them to stop, and nobody does. Everything that follows across 3 entire games and over 30 years of in-universe time traces back to this single moment. Every blade, every kill, every rooftop. All of it starts here with a teenager who lost everything before he even understood what he had. But if the executions created Ezio the assassin, the next entry is about the person who reminded him he was still human. Cristina Vespucci's death. The Auditore executions were loud, public. A spectacle designed to break a family in front of an entire city. Cristina Vespucci is the opposite of that. She's the tragedy that happens quietly, in the spaces between missions, in the life Ezio slowly walks away from without ever really deciding to. Cristina is Ezio's first love. Not a political alliance, not a brotherhood contact, just a girl from Florence who made him happy before the world fell apart. And after his family is destroyed, after he picks up the hidden blade and starts down a path he can never come back from, she's still there. For 22 years, their lives intersect in the most painful ways, brief moments of what if scattered across Italy while Ezio builds a revolution. Here's the thing, while Ezio loses her piece by piece over 2 decades, her end is actually very definitive. She isn't just a casualty of distance, she's a casualty of the chaos Ezio couldn't stop. In 1498, during the Bonfire of the Vanities, Cristina and her husband are attacked by Girolamo Savonarola's soldiers. Ezio finds her, but he's too late. She dies in his arms, still wearing the pendant he gave her more than half a lifetime ago. He didn't just choose the Brotherhood over her, he realized too late that the world he fought to change had already claimed her. Now, there's often a bit of confusion about where this story lives. You won't find her death in the main sequence of Assassin's Creed 2. It was actually tucked away in the Cristina memories in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. As for AC2, Discovery, that's a separate chapter entirely, set in Spain, but Cristina's end in Florence is very much canon and very much the closing of that door. He didn't just hear it shut, he felt it. She's not the most dramatic loss in this franchise, but she might be the most human one. Sometimes the saddest thing isn't just the death itself, it's the 22 years of almost that preceded it. But if the slow erosion of love sounds painful, wait until you see what happens when that love is ripped away by a blade in someone else's hand. Maria Thorpe's death. Most love stories in Assassin's Creed end badly. That's basically a given. But Maria Thorpe's hits different because of what she represented before she was ever a love interest. She was a Templar, a full-blooded, committed Templar who believed in the Order's mission. And Altair didn't just defeat her, he convinced her. Through years of conflict and conversation and something that looked a lot like mutual respect, a Templar knight became an assassin's wife. That's not romance for the sake of romance, that's proof that the assassin-Templar divide can actually be bridged on a personal level, which makes what happens next so much worse. Maria dies during the events of Revelations, right there in Masyaf, during Abbas Sophian's coup, while Altair is standing next to her. He uses the Apple of Eden to try to end the confrontation, and in the chaos, Swami stabs her. One blade, one moment, and the woman who crossed an ideological war to stand beside him is gone. And here's the thing, some fans point out that the scene is almost too fast, but the suddenness is the point. Altair didn't lose Maria in some dramatic last stand. He lost her in a messy, violent power struggle right in front of his eyes because he couldn't control the situation. No final words. No heroic sacrifice, just chaos and a knife. Altair achieved everything. He reformed the Brotherhood, mastered the apple, found love with a former enemy, built a family. And then he lost the one person who made all of it worth having. Not in some epic battle, in a coup, in his own home. Fans consistently praise Maria as one of the franchise's most developed female characters, and they're right, which is exactly why losing her feels less like a plot point and more like a punishment. But if her death is the wound, then what comes next is the scar. Because Altair's final moments are somehow even harder to watch. Altair's final moments. Most assassins die with a blade in their hand or one in their back. Altair ibn Lahad dies sitting down. By 1257, the man is 92 years old. 92, every single person he ever loved is dead. His wife Maria, gone. His sons, gone. The Brotherhood he rebuilt from nothing, scattered. He spent decades in exile, decades more in philosophical isolation, and now he's alone in the hidden library beneath Masyaf, with nothing but the apple of Eden and the weight of an entire lifetime of violence. And his final act isn't a fight, it's a handoff. Altair seals himself inside the sanctuary, places the apple on its pedestal, and sits down in a stone chair. That's it. No dramatic last words, no enemy breaking down the door. He just stops. After 92 years of killing, losing, rebuilding, and losing again, he simply decides he's done. But here's where it gets genuinely beautiful. Centuries later, Ezio Auditore walks into that same library. He finds Altair's remains, still sitting in that chair, and through the animus, these two legends share a moment of connection across time. 4 years of real-world game releases, two of the most iconic characters in gaming history, and they finally meet in a dark room under a castle in Syria. Ezio doesn't fight, he kneels. He understands. The apple passes forward through time to Desmond Miles, ensuring that everything Altair sacrificed actually meant something. His life's work survives him, even though literally nothing else does. It's one of the only peaceful deaths in the entire franchise. No betrayal, no ambush, no last stand, just an old man who outlived everyone, sitting down for the last time. And somehow that's sadder than any blade could ever be. But that peace came at a cost, and not everyone close to Ezio got to share in it. Yusuf Tazim's death. Most deaths in Assassin's Creed happen fast. A blade, a gunshot, a dramatic fall, you process it, you move on. Yusuf Tazim didn't get that mercy, and neither did you. Yusuf led the Turkish assassins in Constantinople and became Ezio's closest ally during his time in the city, and calling him just an ally undersells it. Yusuf was a mentor, a brother, and one of the only people in the entire franchise who could make Ezio genuinely laugh. He was the one who handed Ezio the hook blade, and with it, a sense of wonder that Ezio hadn't felt in years. He welcomed a legendary mentor into a foreign city with zero ego, treating him like family from the moment he stepped off the boat. But here is where the tragedy shifts from the battlefield to the personal. The Templars didn't capture Yusuf for a public execution. They didn't crucify him. Instead, they used the one thing they knew would hurt Ezio more than a blade: his heart. When the Templars attacked the bookstore to kidnap Sofia Sartor, Yusuf didn't run. He didn't call for backup. He stood his ground alone against an entire squad of Byzantine guards to protect the woman Ezio loved. He didn't die a spectacular, loud death in a town square. He was found by Ezio in the wreckage of the shop, slumped over a desk with a Templar dagger buried deep in his back. There were no grand final words, no heroic monologue, just a man who fought to his last breath for a friend's happiness. For Ezio, seeing Yusuf, the man who was always ready with a joke and a helping hand, turned into a cold message of war was almost too much to bear. By this point, Ezio is in his 50s. He's been an assassin for over 30 years. He's buried parents, brothers, and lovers. But losing Yusuf hits differently because Yusuf represented the future of the Brotherhood, a man who proved the creed could be led with warmth and joy, not just grim duty. When Ezio gently closes Yusuf's eyes, you aren't just watching him mourn a friend. You're watching him realize that as long as he stays in this fight, everyone he loves is a target. The fan base consistently ranks Yusuf's death as more emotionally devastating than several actual protagonist deaths in the series. And honestly, they're right. Sometimes it's not the main character's death that breaks you. It's the one person who made the main character feel human. But if Yusuf's death hardened Ezio's resolve, what happened to Desmond Miles shattered the entire modern-day storyline permanently. Desmond Miles' sacrifice. Here's the thing about Desmond Miles that nobody wants to say out loud. He never had a single good day across across 5 entire games. Think about that for a second. From the moment we meet him in 2007, Desmond is a prisoner. Abstergo kidnaps him, straps him into the Animus, and forces him to relive the memories of dead men. Then the assassins rescue him, which really just means a different group of people strap him into a different Animus and force him to relive the memories of different dead men. His entire existence across 5 years of real-world releases is being a vessel for other people's stories. He never gets to be the hero. He's the USB drive the hero's memories get uploaded to. And then December 21st, 2012 happens. A catastrophic solar flare is about to wipe out all life on Earth, and Desmond is the only person who can stop it. He uses an apple of Eden to redirect the flare, absorbing lethal amounts of radiation in the process. He knows exactly what it will cost him. He does it anyway. That's the part that breaks people. Desmond's one and only act of genuine free will across 5 games is choosing to die. The guy who spent every waking moment being used by someone, controlled by someone, living someone else's life, finally gets to make a decision that belongs entirely to him. And it kills him, which is, not ideal. The fan base is still split on this. Some players think it was the perfect ending, and every Assassin's Creed game since has felt the absence. He didn't just save the world, he ended an era. But if Desmond's death changed the franchise, the next one changed a single man's entire world, and nobody was there to witness it. Achilles Davenport's passing. There's no dramatic cutscene, no swelling orchestra, no final words whispered through labored breathing. Connor just walks into the house, and Achilles is sitting in his chair, slumped over. Still, that's it. That's the whole death scene. And honestly, it's one of the most devastating moments in the entire franchise because of how quiet it is. Achilles Davenport was already in his 60s by the time Connor met him, already broken. He'd watched his entire brotherhood get dismantled once before. Every assassin he trained, every alliance he built, all of it crumbled to nothing. So when this angry, grieving Mohawk kid shows up at his door looking for purpose, Achilles knows exactly how this story ends. He's seen it. He trains Connor anyway. Here's the thing about Achilles that makes his death hit different. He wasn't just Connor's mentor, he was Connor's only family. Connor's mother was murdered. His father was literally the enemy. The homestead, that little community Achilles helped him build, was the closest thing Connor ever had to belonging somewhere. And Achilles was the center of it. But one day, Connor leaves on a mission. Standard brotherhood business. Nothing unusual, and while he's out there fighting a war that will never love him back, Achilles dies of illness. Alone. In the house they shared. Connor comes home to a body in a chair. No goodbye, no last lesson, no closure, just stillness. And that's thematically perfect for a game about a man who spends every waking moment fighting for people and causes that consistently abandon him. The one person who actually cared about Connor slipped away while he wasn't looking, which is, not ideal. The worst part is that Achilles probably knew it was coming. He'd been declining for a while, but he never asked Connor to stay, never pulled him aside for some grand farewell speech. He just let the kid go do his work, and then he died quietly, because that's what old assassins do. They don't get dramatic exits, they get empty rooms, but at least Achilles went peacefully. The next entry on this list didn't get that luxury, not even close. Blackbeard's Last Stand. This is the moment Black Flag stops being fun, and I mean that literally. Everything before Blackbeard's death is a pirate fantasy. You're sailing open waters, raiding ships, drinking with your crew, living the dream. The game lets you believe, even for a second, that this life is sustainable, that freedom has no price tag. Then November 1718 happens. Edward Thatch, the most feared pirate in the Caribbean, gets cornered in a naval confrontation off the coast of North Carolina, and he doesn't go quietly. The man absorbs 25 stab wounds and 5 gunshot wounds before he finally drops. 25 stab wounds. That's not a death, that's a demolition. The game doesn't shy away from it either. You watch this man, this legend, get carved apart in real time while still swinging, still fighting, still refusing to accept what everyone else already knows. Here's what makes it hurt. Blackbeard wasn't just some cool side character, he was Edward Kenway's mentor, his surrogate father, the guy who taught him how to survive, how to command respect, how to be more than just some drunk with a ship. Every lesson Edward carries through the rest of the game came from this man. So when Blackbeard goes down swinging against impossible odds, Edward isn't just losing an ally, he's watching the strongest person he knows get destroyed by the very life they both chose. And that's the real gut punch. If Blackbeard can't make it, with all his reputation, all his power, all his sheer refusal to die, then nobody can. The golden age of piracy isn't ending someday, it's ending now. Edward just hasn't accepted it yet, but he's about to get another lesson in loss, one that hits even closer. Mary Read's death. Mary Read survived everything the Caribbean could throw at her. Naval battles, Templar ambushes, betrayal, the slow collapse of the entire pirate republic. She fought alongside Edward Kenway when half the men around her couldn't keep up. She was sharper, tougher, and more committed to the cause than almost anyone in Black Flag's cast, and she died of illness in a prison cell. That's what makes this one sting, in a way combat deaths never do. There's no heroic last stand, no final blade swing, no dramatic speech while bleeding out on a ship deck. Mary Red, one of the fiercest pirates Edward ever sailed with, wasted away behind bars in a Jamaican prison, slowly, quietly, with zero fanfare. Here's the thing about Mary. She spent the entire game maintaining this persona of absolute resilience. Nothing rattled her. She was the one keeping Edward grounded when he was off chasing gold and glory like a fool. She saw through the romanticism of piracy before anyone else did, and she still chose to fight. That takes a different kind of strength, but strength doesn't cure disease. Which is, not ideal. For Edward, this is the death that breaks the fantasy completely. He'd already lost Blackbeard, already watched the pirate dream start crumbling, but Mary's death is the one that strips away every last shred of romanticism, because if someone like her can be taken out by something so mundane, so ordinary, then the whole lifestyle was never what he thought it was. It was never freedom, it was just a slower way to die. And the worst part? This actually happened. Mary Red was a real person. She really did die in a Jamaican prison around 1721, likely from fever. The game didn't invent this tragedy, history did. Ubisoft just made you care about it. She was also one of the franchise's first truly complex female characters. Not a love interest, not a damsel. A pirate who earned every ounce of respect she got, and whose death proved that earning respect doesn't earn you immunity from the world's indifference. But if you think losing Mary was the emotional low point of Black Flag, wait until the game decides to twist the knife one final time. The Parting Glass. Most of the moments on this list are about watching someone die. This one is about watching someone realize how many people they've already lost. The final sequence of Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag isn't a battle. There's no dramatic last stand, no heroic sacrifice, no enemy to fight. It's just Edward Kenway sitting at a table while the ghosts of every friend he buried throughout the game appear around him. Blackbeard, Mary Read, all of them. And as they fade in one by one, the traditional Irish folk song, The Parting Glass, plays over everything. Here's the thing about that song choice. The Parting Glass isn't just some sad melody Ubisoft picked because it sounded nice. It's historically the last song sung at the end of a gathering, a final toast before everyone goes their separate ways. It's a farewell song, a funeral song, and by placing it here, the developers retroactively reframe the entire game. Because up until this moment, you thought you were playing a pirate adventure. You were sailing the open seas, hunting treasure, singing shanties with your crew. It was fun, it was exciting, it was freedom, but this scene tells you the truth. You were playing a tragedy the entire time. Every sea shanty was a countdown. Every treasure hunt was a distraction from the fact that Edward was losing everyone around him, one by one, and he was too busy chasing gold to notice until there was nobody left. The brilliance is in the recontextualization. Players didn't cry during Blackbeard's death or Mary's death the way they cry during this scene, because those deaths happened in the middle of the action. You processed them and moved on. But the Parting Glass forces you to sit still and feel all of them at once. No combat, no objectives. Just a man surrounded by empty chairs and the memory of everyone who used to sit in them. It's not a death scene, it's a grief scene, and honestly, that might be worse. But if grief over lost friends hits hard, imagine the weight of betraying every single one of them yourself. Shay Cormack's betrayal. Every other entry on this list involves losing someone you love. This one's about losing something worse, your entire belief system. Shay Cormack spent years as a member of the Assassin Brotherhood. He trained with them, bled with them, trusted them completely, and then he watched them cause a catastrophic earthquake that killed thousands of innocent people, all because they were too reckless and too arrogant to consider the consequences of chasing precursor artifacts they didn't understand. When he confronted his mentors about it, they essentially told him to fall in line, so he didn't. Shay's defection to the Templar Order isn't some power grab or revenge scheme. It's a man standing in the rubble of a city that his own brotherhood destroyed, looking at the bodies and deciding that the people he's been fighting for are the villains. That's not betrayal. That's a moral crisis and the game makes you live through every second of it. You hunt down your former brothers, you dismantle the organization you built your identity around, you watch former friends look at you with hatred and confusion, and the worst part is you can't even blame them. They think you're the traitor. You think they're the monsters? Nobody's lying. Here's the thing. For 7 years, the franchise told players that assassins were the good guys. Period. Templars were control freaks who needed to be stopped. Then Rogue walks in and says, what if the assassins are just as dangerous? And what if the Templars actually have a point? The community is still divided on whether Shay was right, but the fact that the debate exists at all is exactly why this moment hits so hard. There's no funeral here, no dramatic last words. Just a man destroying everything he believed in because his conscience wouldn't let him look away. Rogue remains one of the most underrated games in the franchise, and Shay remains one of its most tragic figures, not because he lost someone, but because he lost himself. Speaking of losing the person you love most to the war between these two orders, Elise de la Serre might be the most painful example in the entire franchise. Elise de la Serre's death. Elise de la Serre is the single best argument the Assassin's Creed franchise ever made for peace, a Templar who genuinely loved an assassin. A woman who looked at the centuries-old war between two ideologies and said, I can fix this from the inside. And the game killed her for it, because that's what this franchise does to optimists. Here's the thing about Elise. She's not some naive idealist stumbling into a conflict she doesn't understand. She grew up Templar. She knew exactly what the Order was, what it stood for, and what it was capable of. And she still chose to try reforming it. She still chose Arno. She tried to hold both worlds in her hands at once. And the game's climax essentially says, no, you can't. Nobody can. She dies at the hands of the very forces she was trying to control, not betrayed by Arno, not killed by some random enemy, destroyed by the machine she thought she could steer, which is basically the thesis statement of the entire Assassin's Creed franchise written in one character arc. This war eats everyone, and it saves its worst appetite for the people brave enough to try ending it. And here's where the tragedy doubles. A Unity launched in such a catastrophically broken state that a huge chunk of players never even finished the game. Faces were falling off, frame rates were collapsing, people were literally falling through the map of revolutionary Paris. So one of the franchise's most emotionally devastating moments happened in a game that half the audience abandoned before reaching it. Elise deserved a better stage. The French Revolution raging in the background only twists the knife further. An entire nation tearing itself apart while two people from opposite sides try desperately to hold on to each other. It's Shakespeare if Shakespeare had a day one patch. But if Elise's death proves the war destroys lovers, the next one proves it doesn't even spare children. Kemu's death. Every Assassin's Creed game has a reason the protagonist picks up a blade, a betrayal, a conspiracy, a death. But Origins doesn't just give Bayek a reason, it gives him a wound that never closes. Kemu is 10 years old when the Order of the Ancients kills him. 10. Not a soldier, not a target. A child. Bayek's child. And the worst part is that his death didn't have to happen. A series of wrong decisions, wrong timing, wrong people in the wrong room. The kind of tragedy that doesn't feel like fate. It feels like a mistake. Which, makes it infinitely worse. Here's the thing about Kemu's death. It doesn't just launch a revenge story. It launches the entire Assassin Brotherhood. Every hidden blade kill across every game in this franchise, every leap of faith, every whispered recitation of the creed, all of it traces back to a father who lost his son in a dark temple in Egypt. That's the origin. Not philosophy, not ideology, grief. And the game knows exactly what it's doing with that. Origins keeps reminding you that killing every single member of the Order won't bring Kemu back. Bayek knows it, you know it, and yet neither of you can stop. You keep hunting, keep assassinating, keep telling yourself the next target will finally make it better. It never does. What Kemu really represented was Bayek's last connection to being a normal person, a father, a husband with something to protect beyond abstract justice. Once Kemu dies, that version of Bayek is gone permanently. What replaces him is a weapon. An incredibly effective, deeply broken weapon that will spend the rest of his life building an organization founded on the worst night of his existence. Some players argue the game leans too hard on a child's death to justify Bayek's rampage, but most people who actually played through it will tell you the execution lands. It's not manipulative, it's just sad, irreversibly quietly sad. But if Kemu's death broke Bayek as a father, what happens next nearly breaks him as a human being entirely. Shadya's murder. Bayek already lost a child. The game knows this. You know this. and then it gives him another one to protect, just to see what happens. Shadia is a young girl Bayek befriends during his travels through the Fayyum region, and she's everything Kemu was. Bright, curious, full of the kind of unearned optimism that only exists in people too young to know better. She looks up to Bayek, she trusts him, and for a brief window, the game lets you believe that maybe this is Bayek's second chance. Maybe protecting Shadia is the thing that gives his crusade meaning. Maybe vengeance can build something instead of just destroying it. Turns out, no. The Order of the Ancients murders her, a child, again, and they do it specifically because of her connection to Bayek, which is the part that breaks everything. Kemu died because Bayek was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Shadia dies because Bayek was in her life at all. His presence didn't protect her. It painted a target on her back. Here's where it gets cruel. The game doesn't treat this as a separate tragedy. It deliberately parallels Kemu's death, forcing Bayek and the player to relive the exact same helplessness with full knowledge of what's coming. You've already watched one child die. You already know what this does to Bayek, and the game makes you sit through it again because it wants you to understand something specific. Bayek's path doesn't save anyone. His vengeance doesn't create safety. It creates proximity to danger, and everyone near him pays the price. The community consistently ranks Shadia's death among Origin's most haunting moments, and the reason is simple. One dead child is a tragedy that motivates a hero. 2 dead children is an indictment. It stops being about what Bayek lost and starts being about what Bayek causes. Every ally, every friend, every innocent person who gets close to him is standing in the blast radius of a man the Order will never stop hunting. He cannot save anyone. The game proved it twice just to make sure you understood. But if you think Origins cornered the market on killing children, the protagonist loves, Odyssey took notes, and it brought receipts. Phoebe's death, you already know what's coming. And that's the worst part. Phoebe is about 12 years old when you meet her in AC Odyssey. She's scrappy, she's brave, she's got more personality than half the adults in ancient Greece, and she latches onto your protagonist like a little sister who refuses to be left behind. She runs errands, she talks too much, she makes you laugh in a game that doesn't always give you reasons to, and then the cult of Cosmos murders her. It's not a battle, it's not a heroic last stand, it's just a kid who trusted the wrong world to keep her safe. The game doesn't let you look away either. Full cinematic treatment, your character cradling her, the music doing exactly what music does in moments like this. There's no dialogue option that fixes it. No branching path where she lives, she's just gone. Here's the thing though, if you played Origins the year before, you watched Kemu die, you watched Shadia drown, and now you're watching Phoebe bleed out in your arms. 3 games, 3 children, 3 times the most powerful person in the room couldn't do the single thing that actually mattered. By the time Phoebe dies, franchise veterans aren't just grieving her, they're grieving the pattern. The recognition that Ubisoft keeps doing this doesn't make it cheaper. It makes it heavier, because you walked into Odyssey knowing, somewhere in the back of your mind, that this girl wasn't going to make it. You just hoped you were wrong. And Phoebe's death doesn't happen at the end. It happens early, you carry it for dozens of hours afterward, through every cultist you hunt, every region you liberate, every hollow victory the game hands you. It never stops weighing on the story. Across every era, every civilization, every protagonist, the one thing Assassin's Creed consistently proves is that power cannot protect the people who matter most. Altair couldn't save Maria. Ezio couldn't save his family. Bayek couldn't save Kemu. And you couldn't save Phoebe. That's not a game mechanic. That's the thesis of the entire franchise. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.